I was wondering, what do I make a video about this week? And then the swimming gods delivered. Hi, Brenton here from Effortless Swimming. I'm a coach based in Australia, and we work primarily with swimmers and triathletes who are wanting to improve their technique, become faster and more efficient. So we run clinics around the country, and I work with a lot of people online as well. And recently, just today actually, Ariarne Titmus, the Olympic 200 and 400 meter gold medalist, posted this video to her Instagram where we get a good look at the side-on view of her stroke. If you've watched this channel recently, you'll know that we did a video of her before she won those Olympic gold medals, and we broke down her stroke and her racing strategy. And we also then had a look at her coach's reaction, so Dean Boxall's reaction from her first gold medal. So I'll put links to those videos below if you haven't seen them yet. In this video, I want to show you some of the key takeaways that I could see from this video that might be helpful with your own swimming. Now, with Arnie's stroke, she uses a 6-beat kick. She usually uses a 2 and 4 breath pattern. Now that's different to what I'd say most of the people that I coach would use. So sometimes you have to take it with a grain of salt. With the very elite swimmers, they're probably going to swim slightly differently to what us as adults are going to swim, who might not necessarily be putting in the same time in kilometers and training into their swimming. But there are some things that we can see here that could be useful to include or try to do as part of your own stroke. So the first thing here that I want to show you is her head position. Now, if we have a look at her head position, this is different for everyone. There's no set position that's ideal for each person. It's individual. So where we would normally be teaching is anywhere from straight down to about 45 degrees there. And you'll see with Arnie, it looks about as though she's like, you know, a fair way forwards, perhaps 1 to 2 meters in front. So if we're thinking like 1 or 2 meters in front of her on the floor of the pool, that's roughly where she's looking. The thing that I sort of like to aim for is a neutral head position or neutral spine as well. So you can see we get this great line through her hips, her torso and her head. Get that nice long line through there. So that's what we call a neutral position through the spine. So really, really nice. And the way that I would often teach that is try and get your ears away from your shoulders, so you're lengthening through your neck, lengthening through your spine, and that can help you get that neutral spine or neutral head position. Where most people tend to look is either too far forwards, so the chin comes out. We want to avoid that usually. And also we want to avoid looking too far down. Because if you're burying your head under the water, it usually means it's a bit harder to get a breath, because then you've either got to lift the head up or you've got to turn the head even further to get a breath. So I really like the head position there. Now, the other thing that we can see here is we'll have a look at her kick, right? So when I'm sort of teaching a kick for most adults, they don't have great ankle flexibility, the majority of them. So we want to try and just make the kick effective. And to me, that means the kick should usually be contained in what I'd think of as like a bucket at the back here. Or you might think of it like the same size as like a laundry basket, where you have your dirty laundry, all right? You keep it in that same size bucket or basket there. And you can see she does that really nicely. The other thing with her kick is you'll see that her quads or her knees don't come too far below the line of her hips. So we have this line here. Yes, they'll always kick below that, but it's not a lot. So when people are what we call kicking from the knees, where they're raising this part of their leg up too much, like they're riding a bike or like they're running, sometimes we see people come too far below, and that's just too much of an increase in drag. So you're going to have to go lower than your hips here in order to get a good kick, but we don't want to make it too low. So this is what we call kicking from the hips, where you'll see it stays reasonably straight and we're not bending too much through that part of the leg. The other thing you'll see is the toes are pointed really nicely here, pointing back behind her. We get this nice flick down to the foot. So on the end of the down kick, if we're looking at this leg here, foot flicks down, and that's where the toes will sometimes then point to the bottom of the pool when the foot flicks down, which is fine. And then on the way back up, you'll see she starts to point those toes back behind her, which you can kind of see there. So, you know, for 90% of the kick, those toes are pointed back behind her. It's only when at the end, when she flicks that foot down, that it will point down, but then it comes back up pretty quickly. So that's a really sort of nice kick she's got. Because the thing with your kick is, a lot of people who are newer to swimming, they're only getting anything out of the downward kick. So it's just like they're focused on the down, 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 down beat. But you actually really need to, as best you can, try to draw the water upwards using your foot on that upward kick, and that drawing upwards of the water then gives you something to kick against. So you've brought the water up, then you can kick down against it and flick the foot off, flick the water off the foot in that position. So in an ideal ideal world, that's what's going to happen with your kick. Easier said than done, but we want to make sure that we don't ignore the upward motion of the kick. And so a way that you can develop that can be from doing things like kicking on the side, kicking on your back, doing vertical kick. So kicking in different directions, because if you're kicking on your side, where you've got one arm in front, one arm by the side, and you're kicking side on, it forces you to work both directions of the kick. One of the things that we try to teach people is to enter fingertips first with the elbow just above the surface of the water, so that then you've got a little bit of room to slide that hand forwards out in front under the water to help get rid of some of the air and the bubbles on the hand. So you can see she does that well. She enters almost at full extension, but then she's got a little bit of room to then slide the hand forwards out in front. And you'll see there's a few bubbles there because she's sprinting, and you're always going to get those air bubbles on your hand when you're sprinting because you just don't have that much time to get rid of them. But you can see as she goes through the catch, yeah, there's still some air bubbles on there, but at sprinting pace, look, it's very few swimmers that I've seen, elite swimmers that I've seen, will actually get rid of all the air bubbles. So we want to try and make it as clean as we can, but it's usually, it's rarely going to be getting rid of all those air bubbles. You can see the same thing on the left hand, all right? So yeah, a few bubbles through here, but it's pretty minimal. She's got a great entry. So again, you can see, mostly see, left hand enters, reaches forwards out in front, nice length through here. We're getting this good lengthening of those muscles through the hips and torso and shoulder. And then when she goes through the catch and then the power phase through here, you get to contract those muscles. So you want to stretch it, bring it back. I think of that, it's like an accordion. Going out, coming back in, going out, coming back in. I think of that as like what's happening through this part of the body with each stroke that you take. Now, the other thing that I really like here is a great position to start the catch. Something that we try and teach is that once you've entered and you finish reaching forwards, we need to get down to this position here where we get the fingers below the wrist and the wrist just below the elbow. So it's very, very slight downwards angle. Now, sometimes when I'm teaching this, people will try and go too low, like they'll try and have like fingers well below the wrist and that well below the elbow. But you can see it's very minimal. You could almost consider that to be just straight out in front, because here you are so much more streamlined and efficient than if either, let's say your hand was up here, fingers up to the surface, or if you were going down too deep. That's going to increase the drag. So where Arnie's at here, great position, really good position here. Then I want you to have a look at her catch. Now, when we teach the catch, and if you've gone through our 5-day catch challenge, you'll know that this is one of our sort of key teaching points is, yes, we want to get a high elbow position, but it doesn't need to be extreme. And this is a really good example of that. So particularly at like sprinting pace. So the catch for me, I believe it sort of starts up here and goes down to here. So when I'm teaching the catch, we're really just talking about this motion here. And that's where we want to set ourselves up in a good position. And a good position is a high elbow catch. And the way that I'd define that would be, if we draw a line from her shoulder to her fingertips, if the elbow is above that line, that is a high elbow catch. Don't get confused with being high elbow should be near the surface. That's not the case. It's more like an elbow forwards position. Now, the reason that's important is when you do that, your forearm is in usually a pretty good angle to press back against the water. Now, when you have a dropped elbow, which is kind of the opposite of what we'd want to be achieving, if you're doing that with a dropped elbow, so this is down here, then most of that ends up pressing down. So if you can, if you work towards that high elbow position, then your hand and forearm is angled well to press back. have a look at this, this high elbow, right? That elbow is just above that imaginary line that I just drew from her shoulder to her fingertips. You wouldn't classify that as extreme. You'd classify that as being a great catch, but you wouldn't say that's an extreme catch. It's not like we'd see with Ian Thorpe or Grant Hackett or Sun Yang. Those guys often are getting close to there, particularly like Grant Hackett, for example. Extreme high elbow catch, or Sun Yang. Distance swimming is a little bit different to sprinting. So in distance swimming, you've got a bit more time to be able to do that. But as general population, we just don't have that same range of motion through the shoulders. So there is no need to go extreme with your high elbow. I do like people to try and get that position when they are doing drills, just to get a feel for it. But when you're swimming, it's not the case. We don't really need that. So you can see there with Arnie, the fastest 200 and 400 freestyler female that there is in the world at the moment. Very close to world record as well. You can see, all right, really nice catch, but it's not what you'd classify as extreme. And my point is, you don't need to go extreme when you see the best in the world not doing some crazy things with their arm there. This is much more sustainable, much more comfortable for most people. And then from there, so she gets this really nice catch. And then as she goes through, so basically from here through to here is what we'd call the in-sweep phase. Sort of where the hand comes from, if we're looking in front, the hand is here, then it's going to start to come in towards the center a bit. So that's that sort of transfer from there to there. And this is through here, this is the power phase. Now, the thing that really stood out to me here that looked really good, and I want to make a point of this because I often find there's quite a few swimmers who get this part wrong. So out the back, we want to exit just past the hip, as you can see here. So her hip's about here. She's exiting just past the hip, as you can see. But the thing that really impressed me with this exit is, have a look at the angle, so how vertical her forearm and hand is from here, to here as well. So pretty much all the way out the back until the very end, when obviously you've got to get the hand out. The forearm and hand is pretty much vertical all the way through. Now, the reason that's a good thing is it's just more surface area, pressing back in the right direction. Now, sometimes the thing that I see here is people often will be two things. They'll either finish short, so they'll exit early, and they lift the arm out here, and they just miss out on that last 15% of the stroke. But the other mistake I see people making is they don't have the right depth of the catch and pull. So sometimes people will be way too deep out the back, and then they just can't stay vertical with that last part. So I want to show you this part. I haven't made a video about this recently. I made one about probably 2 years ago. And I think it's an important video because I rarely see this concept talked about. But if we have a look, I'm going to find a shot where I can see it properly. If we have a look at the depth of her hand through the stroke, all right, we'll go from here. If we trace her fingertips, so we see, okay, it's taking this path, goes through. I know you can't see some of that. Comes up, oh, sorry. Let's go back a bit. Okay, there we go. So she goes there, all right, she's come up. So it takes this sort of path there, if you can roughly see it. So if you were to look at that, it looks like a light bulb, or in the US, sometimes like a light globe, light bulb, same thing. Looks like one of those turned on the side. So if we drew the same shape above the water, it's like your light globe there. So it's like a light bulb on the side. That's the path that the hand should take if we were to trace the depth of the fingertips. So where people often go wrong with this is that they'll usually follow this sort of path, get this quarter of a circle, and then here, sometimes people will start to come up, then they'll go down deeper and they'll finish like that. And that's where they just miss out on that back end propulsion, and they miss out on getting that arm over quickly and comfortably. So that's another thing that we want to make sure that we're doing. So that's a common mistake that I see made. So I wanted to make the point of her depth through the stroke, because to me, it's a much easier way to get a faster stroke rate happening if you can basically, from about here, you want to come in towards the center a bit, and upwards towards the hip. So coming up shallower through there, because then the hand comes straight out. You get this nice propulsion, bring that arm straight over the top. Now again, easier said than done, but you can do that with focusing on the right thing, focusing on the right drills to help do that, and making sure you got the right rotation and a couple of other things. But the way that you can often know whether or not you're doing this wrong is if you ever feel stuck at the back, where like you're pulling through and then it's a bit of an effort to get your arm out, like you just, something awkward is happening there, then it's a good indication that you may be too deep. Sometimes it can mean like you're coming out short as well, like coming out before the hip, but often means that you're deep. So I just wanted to point that out. So this is a really nice video. Go give Arnie a follow on Instagram if you're not already. She's just a fantastic swimmer, and I'll post those 2 other videos below that we've done before. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll be back next week with another video. And yeah, if you do enjoy this stuff, please subscribe if you're not already, and I'll see you next week.